Keith Wolahan, to you, I suppose the original question I put to Michelle, do you think this becomes the new normal, whether people had wished it to be or not, this heightened tone of frustration, even anger around physical events, and then of course there's the social media aspect of it online as well. Do we need to factor it in from here?
Thank you, Greg, and hello, Michelle. I've spoken to many parliamentarians who've been in office a lot longer than me, and all of them agree they have never seen passions so high on either side of a debate than this. And that's a challenge for our nation. We need to demonstrate through our leadership, and Michelle and I have leadership positions as representatives, that we can put our case in a respectful way. And then on the night of the referendum and the days after, we can all come together and agree that the people got it right. And in order to do that, we can't just come to that conclusion on the night. We need to respect each other, to have a different view, and good people of good character can come to a different view on this. We have to believe that if we believe in our democracy.
Do you see that as a risk, Keith Wolahan, that the fractures might run so deep that whichever way it goes, on the 15th of October, there may not be a coalescence around the verdict?
I do, unfortunately. I fear that our nation will be more divided, whatever the result is. And we will all need to find a way to come together and to heal, because there's no other way. We have to come together as a nation. This is a great nation that has so much more in common and to celebrate. But there's going to be work will need to be done that night and in the days after, and we need to acknowledge that in advance.
Michelle, I'm sure you don't want to contemplate being on the unsuccessful side of this, but to the broader point that Keith makes about the verdict having been delivered on the 14th, what happens next?
Well, I think the first thing is we have to respect the verdict. That's the first thing. And the second is that we need to just transition to being a peaceful community. Obviously, there'll be, if we don't get the result that we want, there will be a lot of hurt. The country will be fractured. I don't doubt that, but we need to find a way to pull together so that we can actually deal with the problems before First Australians. I mean, that is the key. We need to circle back to what is actually important here. It's the plight of First Australians, an intergenerational issue. In the way climate change is an intergenerational issue, so is this. I mean, this is why people are so activated about this on both sides. I think people on the yes side, feel that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity and that it might pass. And if we don't seize it, then what are we going to be telling our children and their children? I think that is really focusing the minds of a lot of people. Yeah,
either way, there'll be some disappointment and maybe fracturing that we'll have to deal with as a nation. Let's move on to climate change, since you pointed us there. Michelle Ananda-Rajah, there are murmurs of discontent in some coastal communities. I'm talking at the moment about off the coast of Newcastle in New South Wales, about these offshore wind farm proposals. Chris Bowen tells us today that, yes, on a clear day, you could even see these turbines from the coastline. Is that a problem, or would you go ahead with it anyway?
Australia is in a box seat when it comes to renewable energy and especially wind energy. I mean, the Blue Economy Centre for Research Excellence has actually said that Australia could generate over 2,200 gigawatts from wind alone. Now, that is way more than we need domestically, which points to a significant export market. And the beneficiaries are actually going to be our regions. Those regional communities are the ones that are going to grow off the back of these renewable projects. And these are gigascale projects.
Sure, but isn't it a hard sell to them to say, oh, you've got to look out at the coast and watch these sticks?
I don't think so. I think that when you look at countries that have established offshore wind industries like Denmark, for example, and areas around the North Sea, you see that communities there are actually thriving, because what happens when you have these offshore wind zones developing, and we're talking gigascale here, these are not small things, right? You end up attracting manufacturing as well, because cheap energy draws manufacturing. So you get data centers, you get manufacturing, you attract green hydrogen. It becomes a virtuous cycle, and the beneficiaries are people in the regions, but not just the regions. I mean, these industries have to be supported by professional services, and those professional services are going to come from all over Australia, including urban communities.
Yeah,
so
well,
I can understand that people would be hesitant, but I would urge them to look at countries that actually have got established offshore wind industries already.
All right, well, they may be the benefits that Michelle's describing there, Keith, but from a planning point of view and a blight on the seascape point of view, are you up for offshore wind zones? Maybe would they be more attractive if you just move them further offshore?
I think we've got to be consistent on this. I mean, if I come on a show like this and say, well, not in my backyard for wind, but then don't accept that that's an issue for small modular reactors, then it's inconsistent. So, of course, you need a social license for any form of energy, whether it's wind or small modular reactors. And we are a big nation, and we've done planning, and we can consult with communities and do this well. But the government needs to be consistent. They're using that line to rubbish small modular reactors, to say, oh, well, would you want one in your backyard? You can't say that for one energy source that you think is politically convenient, and the other one you say nothing about it. But we need to be clever about where and how we have a diversity of energy sources, and everything should be on the table.
All right, very briefly, Keith, I discern from your comments that you'd be okay with a small modular reactor somewhere in Menzies, would you?
Well, it's just a silly question. There's a place for everything. There's a place for everything. I don't have coal-fired power stations
Sure.
but we've managed to put them in other places. And that's all we're asking for, is that we have it on the table, we're open-minded, so then private investment can at least look at it like many other countries and allies already do.
Well, somehow I think we'll be having that debate over nuclear. It's barely begun, to be honest, but the government took a bit of a poke at it this week with Chris Bowen's costings. Look, much more we could have talked about. Alas, time has beaten us today. Michelle and Keith, really appreciate you, as always, being back on the program with us, and look forward to the next time. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you both.